Testing for YouTube. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, and we will call to order our regular meeting of council and start by recognizing that we work, live, and play on the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded territories of the Sechot and Hupachesset First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us, and we have one late item to add, which is just discussion and potential approval for a member of council to attend the BC NPHA conference, and that is new business item number 7. Are there any other late items from council? Seeing none, any late items from our corporate officer?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just the council reports were not included in the package, so those will be a late item.
Got it, thank you. Then would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the additions? Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we have adoption of minutes, minutes from the special meeting held and the regular meeting on October 15th, 2024 to be adopted as presented. Motion to adopt by Councillor Mealy and seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we will move on to delegations. Just one delegation today, and we are very happy to introduce our new officer in charge, Inspector Bruce. And come on forward, Inspector Bruce. Inspector Bruce is new to our community, and you haven't made a presentation to council yet, so we just wanted to give you an opportunity to come meet the community. I know we've had the opportunity to meet you, but looking forward to introducing you to everyone.
Red is good, thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and nice to see everyone here today. Thank you for having me, Your Worship. You'll have to forgive me, I have a bit of a frog in my throat. I've been trying to get over a bit of a cold or a cough. But by way of introducing myself, I can say that I've been in Port Alberni here now going on 4 months. And I have arrived here July 8th as my first day in Port Alberni. November will mark 29 years of service in the RCMP for me. That's really echoey, is that okay? Yep. So I'm not sure how much of a history you'd like to hear about me, but I offer that I joined the force in 1995. I spent the first 8 years of my service in Manitoba. The first detachment that I was at was St. Pierre, 6-person detachment. I was the sole female member working there for the 4 years before I went to Selkirk. Selkirk was another 4 years, a much more adventurous post in that there was municipal rural fly-in policing. And then I found myself in 2003 with the opportunity to transfer to British Columbia. And I spent the last 21 years doing the majority of my policing experience right across the Lower Mainland in various watch commander, ops NCO, and road supervisory roles. And then I was commissioned. I could give you the posts. There was Ridge Meadows, Richmond, Burnaby, 2 tours of duty in Burnaby, Outer Gulf Islands as detachment commander for a brief period of time. And then I found myself with the opportunity to come to Port Alberni. So I know that's kind of all over the place, but I could make it more linear if I had more time. But that's me in a nutshell.
That's wonderful, thank you. Really appreciate you coming today, and I know that you've been busy already in the first few months here and have heard really fantastic things about how you're settling in at the department.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're really thrilled to have you, and I'll just turn it over to council with any comments. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for coming today, Inspector Bruce, and we're very happy to have you in our community along with your knowledge and expertise. So welcome to Port Alberni.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And I know that we will be having you at council more regularly for quarterly reports, and the community will get an opportunity to engage with you in those ways a little bit more as well. Any other comments from council? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and making an introduction.
You bet. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Okay, council, we have no unfinished business today, so we'll move on to, no staff reports. So on to bylaws. Item number 1, we have Parks, Recreation and Culture, fees and charges bylaws and recommendations all coming from our last committee of the whole meeting. So I'll turn it over to our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture, and then council for questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the council has a variety of recommendations as part of your agenda package there. And I just wanted to bring council's attention to one note that the section labeled miscellaneous no longer appears in the draft bylaw in front of you today. And so staff felt that those fees fit best in the external use, equipment use policy, and the corresponding fee schedule will be attached there. So just wanted to make council aware that there is a missing portion now. So you'll see that the miscellaneous charges no longer appear.
Thank you very much. Council, questions, comments? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do have a few questions, if I may. The Sunshine Club, we talked about at our committee of the whole meeting about having their increase in charges and a staggered approach over the next 4 years. And this is probably a better question for our corporate officer. Does it have to be in the bylaw, or can we have a separate MOU with the Sunshine Club? I know we had this discussion the other day, but did you decide that it should be in the bylaw, or can it be separate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The charges do not need to be specified in the bylaw. There can be a separate agreement for that particular club outside of it.
And if I may, this is for the Director of Parks and Recreation. The rentals for Glenwood Center, I know that the Sunshine Club does have floor curling there, but there's no rental per hour for seniors. Would that be separate in their agreement for a different rate than what's posted, or how would that work? That's on page 18.
So, Madam Mayor, the rates as outlined in the bylaw would be prescriptive too. So if there's an age or a definitive group or demographic outline there, it would specify that. Otherwise, it would be for anyone wishing to use the space. So specific to the Sunshine Club, staff had explored looking at the current hourly rate based on the amount of usage, and then what the projected new rate would be. So the short answer to the question is, for instance, when we talk about Glenwood, it refers to youth and adult rentals. So seniors or active agers, as I would call them, would fit into the adult category. Of course, if council would wish to see that demographic split out differently, of course, we can do that as well.
And we're talking about the rentals for sports fields. I'm glad to see that the minor youth aren't being charged. I think we all agreed on that. But I did talk about having an increased rate on the adults for the use of sports fields. Right now it's at $18.75, where the hourly amount for just maintenance every year worked out to be just over $86. I don't know how the rest of council feels about having that rate increased. I don't know, does anyone have any comments? I would like to see that rate up to, closer to the usage rate, so, or the actual cost. So I don't know how everybody else feels.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's not the report so much that I have concerns with, but the proposed bylaws, proposed motions that are before us on the floor, haven't been made yet, but essentially on the floor. I think that, granted, I wasn't here at the COW, which I'm really glad that we have this process of having a committee make representations to the council, and that council can have a chance to review it again, even though it's essentially the same body. It seems like somehow the initial measurement of drafting these motions might have been skewed by, you know, an inch here or an inch there. But the problem with building large structures that are intended to last for a long time is that if you're off by an inch at the beginning, you're off by 10 miles at the end. And when I look at these proposed bylaws, I have to say they are going to be off by 10 miles at the end. It seems that council or the committee read the report and then attempted to put their own stamp on it, which is kind of what council should not be doing. council should not be making those administrative decisions as to how much a rent is. Council should not be making administrative decisions that exclude specific groups. And council should certainly not be making decisions that result in regressive taxation to the people of the city of Port Alberni. And that's exactly what this proposed bylaw does in the wording that's on the agenda here. So starting at the beginning, the 1A, I would not support asking the ACRD for a one-time payment. I don't think that that's the appropriate way to go about resolving the funding issues that exist between the city and the ACRD, and they do exist. The city pays often through its tax dollars for facilities and programs that benefit non-city residents, and that does need to be rectified. Simply going to the ACRD and asking for a check, I don't think will facilitate the air that problem needs to be resolved within. I think it will just increase hostilities and confirm the oft-stated notion that the city just wants money from the ACRD, because that's exactly what we'd be asking for. I think politically and effectively, that is a very wrong course to proceed on. There may be a time when it comes to that, but I think engaging in discussions as we have been successfully with the ACRD with regards to different services that are shared and how they can be appropriately shared is a much better way to go. So 1A, I would definitely be voting against. 1B is, along with 1D, are both particularly regressive in that they grant a tax break to a group of people identified by their membership in a demographic, so the Sunshine Club or youths. There's no evidence to suggest that the Sunshine Club, that each member, is in need of being supported by the taxpayers of Port Alberni. The better approach, and although probably not the best approach, there may be problems with a rebate type system, but a rebate system could classify not the members of the Sunshine Club, but individuals that meet certain criteria, such as are city residents, such as are on a certain economic income level, such as are otherwise engaged in the community by providing volunteer time. Just examples, not suggesting that people need to work for a benefit, but I am saying that there are a number of criterias that would be applied on a fair and equitable basis as opposed to simply membership in a club carrying the right card. We've seen throughout history preferring people that carry the right card is not beneficial to society. 1C I find a little bit troubling in that it doesn't seem to be completely thought through that there was a proposal for a 5% annual increase and it's been changed to the consumer price index. I didn't see in the report, and I may have missed it, so my apologies if I did, but how the CPI relates to the increasing costs for the usage of our facilities. CPI is one economic indicator of inflation, but it tends to be based on the basket of goods that an individual consumes and not on specific types of industries, such as the provision of recreational services. So I'm not sure that the CPI would be right. It's a minor point. 1D is that council not charge youth for their usage of the sports fields, eco parks, and concession rentals. I think it's trite to say it's not likely in most circumstances that it's the youth that are paying for this. I would expect in most situations it would be some other adult-aged organizer and or parent and or team organizer that is responsible for those payments. That doesn't say that families with a number of youth should not be encouraged and in fact supported to have their children benefit and in fact have all of our community benefit from their children's involvement in positive activities. However, an absolute ban on the payment by youth-related activities would mean that that benefit is again flowing to individuals that are not in our community and is being paid by individuals that are in our community. Again, I would say that a rebate type of program where people fulfill the criteria, one of which is being a member of the community of Port Alberni, and then an economic criteria as well, followed by whatever else might be appropriate, would be a more appropriate way to ensure that individuals don't pay beyond their means to benefit their families and in turn have the benefit to the community. Simply saying $0 is simply creating a regressive taxation whereby individuals that pay taxes in Port Alberni and may not have the same economic means to pay for or benefit from those taxes that go to those programs, benefit individuals that may not live in Port Alberni and may have a much greater ability to pay for those services. For example, I fail to see how an individual who is on a government pension, not a industry pension, and lives in Port Alberni should be required to pay for a youth who lives at Sprout Lake and whose parents have high six-figure salaries. That is purely regressive, and it is the most abhorrent form of taxation that any government can impose. So for those reasons, I would not be in support of this bylaw motion that's before us today. I am in support of the rewrite of the bylaws and the fees. I think that it would be useful to have this matter sent back to the COW with further information added specifically in regards to these proposals so that we can have some feedback from staff to understand how these proposals will or will not meet the original intent of the proposed bylaw. Because it seems like a report that was well targeted at a certain solution because of a slight bump at the beginning has ended shooting the arrow far, far off course. And finally, I would point out that the fact that these bylaws would support individuals that do not live in our community and would tax in a regressive manner is contrary to pretty much the entirety of item 3 in the city's strategic plan. The highest and best use is made of city-owned assets. Well, I cannot think of any more asset more important to the city than the well-being of its citizens. And if the citizens are taxed for something they do not receive the benefit of, and the benefit flows to those who are, I would say, not entitled to it because of the difference in their demographics, we are not making the highest and best use of the citizens of this city. The citizens receive the best value from its service providers. Again, that certainly is not true if it's not citizens of the city that receive the value and the service providers are those that are paying for the services within the city. The 3.2.1 says, review services provided by the city taxpayers and ensure full value. Ensure the city citizens are receiving the best value from the most appropriate service provider and that city residents are not subsidizing services provided to non-city residents. So the proposed bylaw, as it stands in our agenda, clearly flies in the face of 3.2.1 without any need to extrapolate or interpret the wording. For those reasons, Madam Mayor, I will be voting against this bylaw. And I would invite my fellow councillors, as Councillor Haggard has invited us to provide some opinions on what we think appropriate fees are, to discuss this in a more debate-type fashion where we exchange ideas, and perhaps that is back at the cow with further information being added. Because at this point, I think to simply say we should vote based on our thoughts about whether we like youth and whether we like seniors in the Sunshine Club isn't really addressing the issues of this bylaw, where the issues of this bylaw should be fair and equitable funding so that all members of the community are able to engage in parks and recreation and heritage culture services. Currently, this is not fair or equitable, and I would like to hear other councillors' comments on how we can make it more so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. You did miss a 5-hour-long committee of the whole where we discussed this over and over and over and over again. However, I would just personally say I have no issue whatsoever if we do want to send it back. And I feel like this is a little annoying to staff. Not that they would say that. I appreciate our willing director over here. However, this is an issue that we have been around in circles on. However, when we're going in circles, we're not going in the same circle. We're moving constantly in a slightly different direction. I think that this is a challenging issue for a number of reasons, and we've been talking about it for years and working on this for not years, but we've been working on it for some time. This is a challenging issue because we are trying to get to that point of the best equity that we can. And I think that the issue we keep coming back to is an inequity with the fact that city taxpayers are paying for services for non-city taxpayers. Now, I want to agree with your comments on A. I think this is not the way to get there, specifically the one-time fee. It's not going to get us anywhere. We're not going to get that from the regional district. But I think that we keep coming back to these fees and bylaw or fees and charges discussions because, we do have a good portion of the Alberni Valley residents who utilize the services and are not charged for them via taxation. And we had a lot of that conversation at the last committee of the whole, and that's why we somewhat came to that. And it was noted at the last committee of the whole that when we invested in the ball fields, for instance, for I think it was the Golden Oldies was the name of the tournament, something like that for baseball. It was actually 2 non-city residents that came and asked us to make that financial investment into our fields. So, we know that this happens. We know that, many of the people, I always think the arena is a little bit different because obviously ACRD residents did pay for the build of the arena, but we pay for the ongoing operating cost of it. We know that many of the kids who enjoy the arena for hockey are Sprout Lake residents and so on, regional district residents. We know that many of the kids that you're right, we are trying to accommodate to say we don't want fees and charges to be a barrier to any child playing softball. That was a cognizant decision that we made. However, you're right, that does mean that city residents, whether they are above or below the poverty line, are subsidizing the cost of regional district kids playing on our fields when we waive fees for everyone. So I'm not sure if we need to send this back for further discussion. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm also not sure we're going to get to the perfect path forward because the issue is complex. And there's not an easy way forward. I think if we had regional recreation for the Alberni Valley, we wouldn't be having a lot of these discussions about whether or not we should be increasing fees for the Sunshine Club or other users. When we have, approximately 19,000 taxpayers paying for recreation for approximately 27,000 taxpayers, we are going to keep having these discussions, and there is not currently an equitable method to get there. And we are going to subsidize people who live in the regional areas. We know there's arguments on both sides of that, but ultimately, I mean, our Parks and Rec budget can't be disputed that there's a subsidy going outside of our boundaries. So I'll leave it to council to determine the direction we want to go on this, but I will just say that regardless of the amount of discussion we've had on it already, I do think it's important to get it right. If council feels they need more information, more discussion, then I would welcome council to make that motion and ultimately go there. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree, Councillor Bertola, about writing a letter to the regional district requesting a one-time payment for 2025. That was not in my motion. I'm not sure where that actually came from. My motion was to have that discussion with the ACRD to have a more equitable contribution to the recreational services. So with that in mind, if we get a more equitable contribution from the ACRD for recreational services, then the other things do make sense. And I said, if that doesn't happen, then we have to go to a plan B, whether that be a rebate system or whatever that's going to look like. That could be very top heavy for staff to do, but I do agree the city residents can no longer afford to subsidize recreational services. Have been very fortunate in the past. We've had a lot of contribution for heavy industry, which was contributing to our tax base, and that has now disappeared, or very little left of heavy industry. So we're losing that. We're losing a lot of that. And as for the Sunshine Club, the city did err in not making any increases for over 10 years, and now we're trying to do a very large increase. My thought process was not to put a burden on a huge asset to our community and have the possibility of them folding. They are a large leaseholder of the city's services for Echo Center and our recreational services. So I wanted to keep that club intact, and how would be the best way to do that? And that's why I thought of the graduated approach over 4 years. Was just trying to get a good workable solution for the Sunshine Club and for the city. I gave a lot of statistics at the last meeting I can give to you later if you would like, about how working participants and seniors, those numbers have flipped in the last few years because we do have an aging population, we're all living longer, and people are retiring, and there's less and less working people. So we cannot keep taxing those working people. So they do have to get to that market rate point, but I don't want to put that Sunshine Club in jeopardy because it is a huge asset to our community. And because I do have children who did participate in probably every sport going, and I've seen sports save children. I'm sure that Councillor Meany can agree with this as well. So I don't want to put a roadblock in front of any child, whether it's from 4th Avenue or whether it's from Cherry Creek, that they can't play sport when that sport could actually save them, because they'll have an immediate group of friends, mentors, parents. I myself helped many children through sports, whether it was giving them transportation, giving them meals, or whatever I had to do to keep that child playing. I've sourced out used equipment for children that needed equipment. So I want to keep that in line there. However, one thing I do not agree with, I do think our adults can pay more for fields because they're not paying enough. And I realize nobody wants to pay. As Mayor Minion said at the last meeting, we want everything for free, and if we could, we absolutely would. But I think $18 an hour is not enough. We need to increase that rate. So that's some of my thought processes of why this happened at the last meeting that you weren't here to participate in it here. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense of what we did here. And I would be happy to have it go back to a COW meeting as well to resolve some of these issues.
Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I definitely agree with that this needs further discussion. Now, whether that needs to go to another COW, I'm not convinced. I think that we're here now and we could have a full discussion right here, right now. My preference for having that discussion would be that we go motion by motion here, propose motion, and discuss those individually, because it tends to get a little bit convoluted trying to work through each of these points individually. So with that said, I'm looking at proposed motion A here, and I agree that perhaps writing a letter to the ACRD requesting a one-time payment is not necessarily where we want to be there in terms of just process and diplomacy. But I do think that engaging in a discussion regarding equitable regional contributions for recreation services is extremely important, as you've pointed out. So I'm just going to go ahead and I've just crossed out part of this motion, and if somebody else wants to move on that later, of course they could. But I'm just going to right now move that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to engage in a discussion regarding equitable regional contributions for recreation services with the ACRD.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Haggard. Discussion. Okay, seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And would anyone like to make the second part of the bylaw? Or sorry, make the second motion? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct that the proposed Parks and Recreation Culture Facilities Fees and Charges bylaw number 5106/2024 be amended to include a separate rate structure for the Echo Sunshine Club to meet the rate increases plus CPI via a scaled approach over a 4-year term. Now that I've read that, the question I asked our corporate offers, was it not be in the bylaw? Would it be better to have an agreement directly with the Sunshine Club?
Yep, and I think if you want to update it that way, that's fine.
Okay. So that would be my preference, and I have it in the bylaw, have a separate agreement with the Sunshine Club and have a scaled rate increases plus CPI via a scaled approach over a 4-year term.
Thanks. So we would just be updating the motion that's being moved here to that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to create a separate agreement between the city and the Echo Sunshine Club to meet the rate increases scaled over 4 years plus CPI. Would that be adequate?
That sounds perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's moved. Is there a seconder? Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion on this, and again, I didn't mean to skip over going back to another meeting on this. I do think that potentially we can discuss some of these things here, and if council wants to create further dialogue on it, we can. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first, in response to the general discussion, to Councillor Haggard's comments, thank you. That was very informative. And I see your point that should we have a joint service with the ACRD, then some of these items make a lot of sense. And should we not have one, then we should probably go to Plan B. We don't have one, so I think we should go to Plan B. And on that basis, I would, contrary to Councillor Dame's good intention of going through these things one at a time so we understand them, I would actually move to send the remainder of these motions back to the next CAL meeting or a CAL meeting in the future, depending upon the agenda.
So there is a motion on the floor, so you could move to refer the motion.
Refer.
And
Didn't I say refer?
additional, you said to move them, but if we move to refer the motion that's on the floor as well as the additional motions back to a committee of the whole, I think that'd be correct for us.
That is my motion.
Is there a seconder for that? Okay, seconded by Councillor Dame. And I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Patola, for any additional comments, but I'll just say that if we are going to consider referring this back, I think we should try to give some direction on any specific information additionally we would like to have brought back. And I've got some thoughts on that, but I'll go to Councillor Patola first and then anybody else who would like to speak.
Well, in particular, it would be creating a system whereby individuals are enabled to engage in activities without taxpayers from the city providing services for tax dollars to non-residents of the city. And also, it would be particular to create a system that doesn't result in regressive taxation. Those were my two largest concerns. Thank you.
So are you asking that staff bring back information on what a system like that could look like? Because I think that could be a decent amount of work. Or are you just asking for a discussion on that? At which point, I think, again, we do need to have some basis of information before we bring it forward.
Well, Madam Mayor, you're quite correct that this has been going around for a long time and hasn't been solved. So I do see there's value in getting it right and allowing staff the appropriate time, even if it is a more arduous task, which I'm reticent to impose on anyone, but to investigate the reimbursement type system, or to investigate or bring suggestions on any other type of system that would result in ensuring that it's not a regressive tax and that it corresponds with 3.2.1 of our strategic plan.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is potentially you're asking staff to bring a high-level report that would propose some options, if there are any, that we could feasibly create a system that doesn't contradict with that section of our strategic plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. I mean, it's forward motion, going in circles, but circles that move forward. And that higher level report is easier to produce, but may also result in further questions and an ability to narrow our focus so that we, in fact, do make that arrow hit the target.
Thank you. And Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to put it all together here. So trying to save my voice as well a little bit. Okay, so if the motion is to refer to the committee of the whole, then a lot of the things that I have to say can be said there. It's fine. We go around in circles for this for years, and I felt like that was a good compromise at the committee of the whole meeting at the time, and we came to this direction to go forward. The only thing I thought I missed was during the committee of the whole, I believe Councillor Haggard said that staff to talk with the Sunshine Club ahead of time, and I'm not sure if that was part of this or was done. If I'm not mistaken, there was a willingness or I'm not sure if it was exactly a motion, but it was I'd have to look back at the YouTube video of it. But to meet with the Sunshine Club, and I'm just wondering if that has happened before bringing this to council.
So, Madam Mayor, staff have not yet met with the Sunshine Club. Once we've got an understanding of what council's seeking, what you're looking to achieve, then at that point, staff would plan to meet with the Sunshine Club to explain to them what those implications are. If we're not sure what the net result or the outcome might be, difficult to have conversations because I'd hate to fearmonger or worry folks if we're not sure where that target might be.
Thanks, and I'll just add to that the motion was only passed by committee as a recommendation to council, so I think typically that conversation would happen following council passing it. Go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I appreciate it. And then just to go back, yes, I mean, so if this is going to go back to committee of the whole, I don't want to just keep speaking on it over and over again because it is a circle, but I do see the value in the youth being off the streets and having places to play and all that. So, but and to have the Sunshine Club, obviously, you know, have it viable for them to be in the facility, so if facilities don't close down because we don't have anybody in there. So, so if the motion is to go back to committee of the whole, I'll wait until the committee of the whole for the rest of my comments, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. From my perspective, the information that I think would be most valuable as we circle back into this conversation, if we do pass this this motion to refer, would be usage numbers. This is all based on, so I should say, the motions we have in front of us at a general level, I support the intent of them. Don't charge kids to use ball fields. I mean, it's such a small thing because kids are already, you know, charged to play hockey and to do lots of other things in the community. So we're not making kids' sports free and accessible to everyone, but we are exempting them from this one use. So I don't think it is the be all end all, but I definitely support the direction. I think that we have made some good changes to the bylaw generally. However, the issue we have not made progress on, and the issue we largely never can make progress on, is the inequitability between that cities' taxpayers are subsidizing these services so that, in a lot of cases, regional taxpayers can benefit without contributing to those services. That's the issue we have not made progress on. That's the issue we have not found a solution to. It's also an issue we, in a lot of ways, cannot make progress on our own. We do have some levers, but not anything significant. I think what we need most in order to enter into this conversation and discussion in a meaningful way is a breakdown of usage numbers for our parks and recreation facilities, everything that would be included in this report. So, we had the Minor Softball Association, a representative of that association, come to our last meeting, asking us to not charge kids to play softball. Minor Softball Association, please tell us what percentage of your of your members are city taxpayers versus non-city taxpayers, based on an address, right? They certainly don't have to give us specifics, but I'm sure they can tell us, 20% live in the regional district or 40% live in the regional district. We have a lot of Sunshine Club members here today. I would imagine that the Sunshine Club knows the addresses of the people who are members of the club. What percentage of them live in the city of Port Alberni and what percentage of them live in the regional district? If we want to have a conversation about changing the fees, then I think that our users that we're talking about charging these fees to need to provide us information so that we can know if this is a problem or not. Maybe 95% of Sunshine Club members live in the city of Port Alberni. I think that is a real possibility, that number is very high, based on the fact that, just style of living for seniors. So, I think there's a very good chance that most of the Sunshine Club members, maybe disproportionate to some of our other user types, live in the city. Then we might want to consider looking at this in a different way. I think that the arena may have a higher percentage of regional district taxpayers utilizing it. So as we're if that's the issue we're trying to solve, then we need the information. And if we're talking about trying to decide how much to charge these groups, the most helpful thing these groups can do is give us correct information to go off of. So I don't think that I don't think the regional district is going to just decide to pay equally into these services. I think there's almost a 0% chance that happens. Can we make some progress? I hope so. Have we made any progress? No. Are we making progress on the pool? Maybe, we haven't, so we're having a discussion about the pool and equitable funding. Whether that ends up being a new pool, a renovation, or whatever else, we're having a discussion about that. There's definitely a willingness. The way the regional district directors have worked with us on it has been positive. I think that there's a general recognition that the pool should be a regional service and not a city service. But are we making progress on general recreation in the city of Port Alberni? Absolutely not. The number that is contributed to us, which I think is $40,000 in total by the regional areas for our $4 million roughly recreation service. I think it's not that high, but I should know that number today. But it's not a meaningful contribution. It's very low. It's not at all affordable. It's not at all equitable. If that's the problem we're trying to solve, then we should have all the information in front of us before this comes back. Because otherwise we're just speculating and we're going around in these circles. If we know the numbers generally of usage, city to regional district, then I think we can have these conversations in a more productive way, and we can enter into conversations with the regional district in a more productive way. I know we do have some of those numbers for our own facilities, but it always kind of comes back to well, if the Golden Oldies fastball tournament or baseball tournament is going to ask us to make a financial contribution to improving our fields, then what percentage of them live in the regional district versus what percentage of them are city taxpayers? I think we have to have that information. Councillor Dame and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, excellent points. And I fully agree that ideally in this process, I think council would give a direction of this is where we want to get, and we would and our excellent staff would be able to use data to find the best ways to get there, which I think is what we're doing. And I do see, to Councillor Bertola's point earlier, that we need to be careful that we're not out of a lack of information and data making just emotional decisions that just feel good and I'm not accusing anybody of making purely emotional decisions. We're just doing our best to work with what we've got to meet the needs of the community. I understand that, but I think that if we are going in a circle, at least we're slowly wearing down to the point of seeing what the core issues are and where we're trying to get. And so I think that that's a really good point, that if we do need to make this decision, rather than, be more general in our direction, if we're going to get down to specifics, we have to have the data. So I think that that's a really good point. And I did want to also say that through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Patola, if you could give some clarification on the term regressive taxation. I think I have a pretty good handle on what it means, but just for the public who might be watching, that's come up a few times as something that we want to avoid, or you've mentioned that we might want to avoid it. And I think it might be helpful that people understand exactly what you mean by that term.
Councillor Patola.
So, non-scientifically, regressive taxation would be the sheriff of Nottingham, and progressive taxation would be Robin Hood. So regressive taxation is when you're actually taxing those who are least able to afford it for the benefit of those who are most able to afford it. That's regressive because it regresses the social benefit of the whole concept of taxation.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council Patola, I think we're all both on the same page here. My thought was just, let's talk to the regional directors first to see what their thoughts are, and then go to Plan B, whereas you're going to Plan B right away. But I do agree, Madam Mayor, that I think we need those numbers. It's only going to strengthen our argument. For example, if 60% of the people that play minor hockey are in the regional district, they're going to have to pay 60% of those costs. And I think those numbers are going to be very important. So it just depends where we want to go first, have the conversations first or have the Plan B first, then have the conversations. It really doesn't matter. We're both going to get there, but we're all on the same page. I think we are anyway. So thank you.
I totally agree.
Thank you. And I just think it's important to say, if we had equitable contribution from the regional district, we would not need to be having any of these discussions about fee increases. And that's the reality of where we're at today. Equitable contribution to our Parks and Rec service. And, actually somebody, when we were at our last committee of the whole, and I stepped out for a moment and came back in, somebody caught me in the hallway and said, hey, is it normal for a city to own and operate all of the recreation and the regional areas to not pay for it? And I said, no, this is not normal. It is, there are some examples of where this happens in municipalities, but for the most part, they are being corrected over time. It is not a model that people are moving toward. It's a model people are moving away from. And typically, like is the case in the city of Port Alberni, the municipalities were incorporated first. The regional systems, came into effect at a later date, and therefore we just happen to own all of the recreation services. It doesn't mean we should pay for all of it when the regional area taxpayers should not contribute at the same level. So, somebody asked me about Nanaimo, and I'm like, well, in Nanaimo, the whole greater Nanaimo regional district, they have some sub-services and stuff, but Qualicum right now is talking about a new pool. Parksville is paying, if it passes in referendum, it's for Parksville, Arrington, all of the surrounding areas. Nanaimo has recreation services that are paid for by Qualicum. So this is, and all of the areas in between. Sunshine Coast, I know, went through a large change a few years ago. This is not the norm for how recreation is paid for. It never should be only city taxpayers paying for recreation and everyone in the regional district areas having the benefit of using it, but not paying. And we will never recoup that difference through user fees, increased user fees. So this has been a challenge for many, many years, certainly the time I've been on council, and I know long before as well. There's been a number of attempts to fix it, and we just haven't gotten there I don't think we're going to get there in an easy way in the next few months, but there might be some, minor improvements that we can make, recognizing that it is a challenging issue. And I just hope the public understands how large these numbers are that we're talking about. Like, we are talking about a difference of millions of dollars a year that are paid. I remember actually when I first got on council, there was a number that Scott Kenny, who was the director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage at the time, told us that the average regional district resident pays about $12 a year for recreation, and the average city resident was paying like $450. So like, we are not talking about small or minor differences here. Yeah, these are big numbers, big differences, and these are the reasons, like these discrepancies are the reasons that we need to look for increased fees in other areas. Okay, so with that, we do have a motion to refer. Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just was asking for clarification. So because Councillor Dame had the first, and we've already passed that, so it's just everything else to refer to the committee of the whole. Okay, just want to make sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. So we'll just skip the rest of that. All right, and item number 2, another recommendation from October 21st Committee of the Whole for the Municipal Revitalization Tax Exemption Bylaw. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Council of the City of Port Alberni repeal City of Port Alberni Revitalization Tax Exemption Program Bylaw number 4824.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Council of the City of Port Alberni repeal City of Port Alberni Commercial Revitalization Tax Exemption Bylaw Program Bylaw number 4898.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to permissive tax exemption, just a final adoption. Councillor Dame, would you like to read this one?
Certainly. I move that a permissive tax exemption bylaw number 5115-2024 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and corporate officer, and numbered 5115.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
And I move that permissive tax exemption bylaw amendment number 1, bylaw number 5091-1, 2024 be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and corporate officer, and numbered 5091-1.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And item number 4, we have a report from the Community Safety and Social Development Manager requesting council consider 3 readings of a proposed bylaw, who I don't see here. Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our manager is away at the Community Wellbeing and Safety Conference, so I'll be happy to speak to that for her today. So this is a minor amendment to the Animal Control and Pound bylaw, and essentially what the amendment involves is moving to a permanent dog tag system. So it will still be renewed on an annual basis for the same fee, so no fee changes, but essentially we just won't be sending out that tag every year. You'll remain with the same tag. And so that will see some savings as well, which will be, should council move forward with the amendment, we'll amend that in the budget on that line item, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Not a question, but a comment. I just want to commend staff. These little changes add up to staff savings in time and money for the taxpayer, so thank you. And if I could read the motion? I'd like to move that Animal Control and Pound bylaw number 5117, 2024 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Councillor Mealy.
Just for those who aren't reading into the agenda, so the main thing here is one tag shall be provided by the city when the dog is licensed for a first time. There is a duplicate or transfer license fee for $5, which could include the replacement of that tag. So just so people go, I'm only getting one tag, how much is it? If you lose the dog's tag, it's $5.
Thank you. Motion is moved and seconded. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Councillor Haggard.
I move that animal control and pound bylaw number 5117, 2024 be read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor. Carried, none opposed.
I move that animal control and pound bylaw number 5117, 2024 be read a third time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor. Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And on to correspondence for action. Our first item today is from the Vancouver Island Regional Library, and this is a letter requesting submissions for our 2025 appointment of representative to the Board of Trustees. And I will move that pursuant to the Library Act, Council appoints Councillor Patola as the City of Port Alberni's representative to serve on the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees for a term ending December 31st, 2025. Assuming Councillor Patola accepts. He does. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor. Carried, none opposed. And B, I will move that pursuant to the Library Act, Council appoints Councillor Haggard as the City of Port Alberni's alternative representative to serve on the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees for a term ending December 31st, 2025. And seconded by Councillor Haggard. That's good news. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor. Carried. Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Motion carried. Item number 2, we have a letter dated October 22nd from the Stolen Child BC Productions requesting an extension to the noise bylaw on October 28th, November 1st, 4th, 8th, 12th, and 14th, 2024 on Golden Street for the filming of The Stolen Child. Do we have any additional information or is there questions from council? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just the question through you to staff. How are the residents in the area to be notified of such or at all?
Through the chair, I can answer the question if you need more information. I know our economic development officer is here as well that can probably provide a little more detail. The production did go out to all residents in the surrounding area and get their support. So that is actually, they have signed letters of support for the activities happening and for the hours in which they're happening. So they have engaged with all residents with communication and even went as far as to get them sign a letter of support.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Dame, would you like to read that motion?
I move that council authorize an exemption to the noise control bylaw 2009 number 4718 to permit the filming of The Stolen Child on Golden Street on October 28th, November 1st, 4th, 8th, 12th, and 14th, 2024 until 10:30 p.m.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no additional comments on the motion, all in favor. Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And item number 3, from the Alberni Valley Food Security Society, we have a letter dated October 24th, 2024, requesting a letter of support to accompany a grant application. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read this one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council direct staff to prepare a letter of support to the Alberni Valley Food Security Society to accompany their grant application to the federal government Local Food Infrastructure Fund in order to purchase an agri-kit to be situated on city-owned lands known as the Community Garden, presently leased by the Society, subject to the city not incurring any associated financial costs, and that the initiative meets zoning regulations.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments or questions? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor. Carried, none opposed. On to proclamations, we have one item, an email dated October 22nd requesting the month of December be proclaimed as Christian Heritage Month in Port Alberni. Comments or motion?
Motion to receive, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Motion to receive. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor. Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And correspondence for information, and I'll just go to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have a number of items from the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District inviting public input on their waste reduction plan, their newsletter of Keeping You Connected for September 2024, and a news release regarding the Sarita River washout. As well, we have various ministry letters in follow-up to the 2024 UBCM convention meetings, and we have meeting minutes from the Advisory Planning Commission for January 18th and June 20th.
Thank you very much. Any items councillors would like to speak to? On behalf of the City of Port Alberni, I did just want to express our condolences regarding the 2 lives that were lost during the Sarita River washout. Just a horrible, horrible tragedy. And I know the regional district did send out information, but yeah, what an awful, I think Chief Councillor and Chair of the Regional District, John Jack's words were perfect when he just really expressed how hard of a situation it was, given, you know, all of the lives that have been lost on that road, and that we really thought those days were behind us. So given the improvements that have happened, it was just very sad to see that tragedy. Councillor Haggard.
Madam Mayor, could we send a letter of condolences to the community of Banfield?
Absolutely. Cool. I don't think we need a motion for that. We'll get staff to write it. Okay. Okay, would somebody like to move receipt of the correspondence? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Okay, and no report from in camera, and we do have council reports, including late items. Any comments councillors would like to make on council reports today? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And on to new business. Item number 1, we have a recommendation from the October 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to prepare a letter of support for long shot events for their proposed Alberni Shores event. Councillor Haggard.
I'd like to move that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to prepare a letter of support to Longshot Events, Inc. for their proposed Alberni Shores event.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. And item number 2, we have Coastal Restoration Society and a recommendation from the October 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole to write a letter of support, subject to receiving confirmation of support from Sashot and Hoopachasit First Nations. Councillor Haggard, would you like to read this one?
Thank you. I'd like to move that Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to prepare a letter of support to Coastal Restoration Society for construction of a vessel recycling facility, subject to the Society receiving endorsement from the Shashot and Hoopachasit First Nations.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments or questions? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This may have been discussed much more in depth at the Committee of the Whole. I'm concerned about having vessel recycling facilities on our harbor. I know that we've in the past spoken as a council opposed to ship-breaking facilities. I realize that this is not a ship-breaking facility per se. It's focused on derelict vessels and recycling them out of the water and into better uses. I am concerned, though, that that is the first step on the slope and certainly would expand or could expand into ship-breaking facilities or be the cornerstone for other industries or other businesses to then expand into ship-breaking facilities. So I think we should tread very cautiously with regards to this, and I would not be willing to lend my support to the CRS at this time.
Thank you. And I think we did have some conversation about that because I think there's general concern about ship breaking, absolutely. CRS was here, so they did provide some additional information just to clarify how this type of facility would be very much different than an open facility that takes part somewhat in the water, which is what's happening in other areas where this kind of activity is an issue. This one was a land fully contained production, operation. So very different. I will just say that from my perspective, and I'm one of the people who has expressed concern about this type of operation in the past, and other providers that we've had interested in doing ship-breaking activities on the waterways. I feel a lot of confidence in Coastal Restoration Society, specifically because their whole mandate is recycling in a clean way, cleaning up the waterways, and they have a pretty long history of cleaning up old industrial sites along the inlet, working with First Nations in a really meaningful way, cleaning up invasive species, et cetera. So for me, the fact that Coastal Restoration Society is the group that's proposing this offers a lot of confidence. I feel like I've had a bit of the privilege of working, watching them work over the last few years as they came into the community. And yeah, I've been highly impressed by the type of work that they've done. And I do know that our economic development manager is here. Pat, I'm not sure if you've worked with them at all yet on this specific project, but Pat may be able to answer any clarifying questions that you have. And if you want more information, certainly we can reach out for it as well.
Madam Mayor, and through to Councillor Patola, we have worked with the society to ensure that the operation would be contained as much as possible. It would be state of the art. It is meant to be for small vessels, a complement to Canadian maritime engineering if they ever get to that point. They are also in discussion with the REDA program staff and the provincial government staff. A lot of concerns that have been raised are being addressed by the organization. And I think it would make a meaningful contribution to our efforts to inspire the blue economy initiatives here. So I too have confidence in the organization to do it correctly.
Thank you. Additional questions? I'll go to Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Patola.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. No, it was just more along the lines of I had the same concerns through you to Councillor Patola. After the presentation at the last meeting, I felt a lot better about it, and especially too considering they're not going to receive our endorsement without the endorsement of the Seychelles and Hupachesu, with I believe they're working with closely anyway. So I think it's good. I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Yeah, clarify, I don't have any reservations about CRS. I've only seen good things come out of there. To my knowledge, I haven't seen everything. I'm not an expert on it. This would be a type of motion where I would abstain for my lack of understanding, but I can't abstain. So I'll probably vote no, looking at the rest of my councillors to vote yes, and we'll know what the outcome is, but at least my concerns will have been stated.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments?
That'll teach you for going on holidays.
Thank you. And thank you, Pat Deacon. Okay, on the motion, all in favor and opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, item number 3, city involvement in local events, recommendations from the October 21st Committee of the Whole meeting. So we do have a number here. Maybe I'll start with just asking Councillor Mealy to read them off one by one, and we can have any needed discussion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to move the first night and polar bear swim events to the collaborative event category for 2024, and further, that staff engage with the appropriate organizations to begin planning.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Dame. Comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. And item number 2, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that the Council of the City of Port Alberni direct staff to contact each event organizer to outline their corresponding category classification starting in 2025.
Okay, moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no, Councillor Patola.
Sorry, I'm just not really sure what it means, and I understand the attempt to classify different events as to how the city will respond to events in that category. I'm not sure how each event organizer is going to outline their category. So I'm just, could only assume that this is a plan that administration supports, that would assist them in their planning. And for that matter, I would support it, but it seems to be kind of just unclear to me.
I think that the intent here is that city staff reach out to each event organizer group and let them know which category they're in and if there's planning from there. So for the city, or not city-led ones, but the collaborative ones, we would then be clarifying what our roles will be. Thank you. Okay, seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. And moving on, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council of the City of Port Alberni provide staff with a list of the events council wishes to support for 5-year periods.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Councillor Haggard.
Can you just clarify, Madam Mayor, does the City of Port Alberni want us to come up with this list to give to them?
I was actually, when I heard Councillor Mealy read it, I thought, no. I think that we should get a list of the events and bring that, and council can give direction. Mike?
Through the chair, there was a list of the events in the report, and if council is happy with those events and in the locations they are, then they could move that as it was written in the report. If you're not in favor of that, then you would have to amend it or change which area.
And just for clarity, because I think this motion has been sort of minimized from the original sort of intent of it a bit, this was to do with road closures and things like that, was it not? Like, what are we supporting these events for? Just supporting that they're in the categories that they're in, or the locations?
Through the chair, this is, the motion came from Councillor Dame, and I guess it was about giving surety to events that are happening. So this would apply for CIP funding, that once it's made the motion, they know that they would have that funding for that 5-year period to make sure their event could be successful on an ongoing basis, including road closures, barricade rentals, all of those types of in-kind. So then staff can put that together to make sure that that event will continue. I believe that it came up with some of the events having issues organizing and applying for CIP on time and coming with last minute requests to council. And where council was, of course we support this, so why can't we just do that? And then Councillor Dame decided that this was a good way of giving them that assurance.
Okay, so this is then, we don't have enough information today to make 5-year commitments to things. So this needs to come back to council, because if we're making a 5-year commitment to funding something at a certain level in CIP, we need to make sure we have all that current information in front of us before we approve it for 5 years. If we're making a motion to approve a road closure for 5-year period, then we need to, again, know what that road closure is, the extent of it for that 5-year period. And if we're making a motion to approve an event in a certain location, we need to know what that location is. So I definitely agree with the intent of this motion. I just think it, as it's written today, well, I guess as it's written today, it's for council to provide staff with a list of events we wish to support, and then staff would bring us the specific details back of that. So I think the suggestion that we could just approve it from a list that's included in the report, in my opinion, would not be. So I think but back to the original question, it was more, are we going to provide that list, or is staff going to provide that list to us? I would certainly appreciate if staff provided that list to us. Councillor Dame.
Sure, yeah. I didn't have my hand up, but I can comment. Okay, you just wanted to, because it was my original motion. Yeah, no, the intent was that it would become standard practice that council would consider when these requests are brought forward that standard would be 5 years approval, because if we like an event enough to approve it for 1 year, it stands to reason that we don't need to have it coming back on a yearly basis, and it also provides surety to the volunteers and the organizations that are running them that their event, they don't have to keep coming and applying for things year after year after year, and which relieves not only the volunteers but also city staff of unnecessary work. But I understand that we might not want to just across the board say every event is approved for 5 straight years, and so I guess I think maybe we need to fine tune exactly how we want to approach that.
Thanks. So I'm just trying to make sure that I understand like what next steps are going to be if we approve this motion. I think the general intent, there's certainly agreement on. We'd like to make it easier for event organizers to know that they have their funding to hold their events, to know that they have their location secured, subject to any, major changes, that type of thing. But the motion right now just says council's going to bring a list, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily the correct next step. Maybe the next step is taking the events list that we have, or I don't know if we have a different, I don't think the events that are included in our package are the only ones that we give approvals to for things in the community. So maybe the next step is not this, it is, it's every year when or this upcoming year, every time an event comes forward, we would look to determine if we want to approve it for 5 years or not, rather than us just grab all the events and have a long discussion. And if the intent of this original motion was CIP funding commitment for 5 years, which I didn't really understand it to be, but I think that's a good idea also. I'm wondering if, first of all, the terms of reference of our CIP program would have to be potentially amended for that. And maybe this year when we get to the CIP, which I think is coming up reasonably soon, we would then pick out from a list which ones we'd like to give longer term approval for. So if that's the direction, we might want to just carve out a bit more time when CIP comes back to us, or staff might want to just include that in the event. But I think the most effective way to do this may be just on a one-off basis as they come forward, rather than us just trying to come up with a list of all events. Councillor Mealy and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was my take on that was for us to create the list, and I go back now and I look, and it was a bit trying to find the list of from the previous meeting, and some are group events that I never even thought of, and some are the usual, like the Salmon Fest, Fall Fair Parade, Toy Run, Terry Fox Run, Grad Parade, National Day of Truth Reconciliation, Polar Bear Swim, Remembrance Day. Those are like the main ones, and then there's a whole bunch of others. So we can create a list, but I would like to see. I'd hate to miss somebody. That's what I'm kind of getting at. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. And I think really in terms of making this functional in the way that we're intending it, I think this is a great direction. I would love for just the grad parade takes, I think, the same route every year, right? When they come forward this year and ask us to close the road, we would just ask them back if they would like to have that approval for 5 years. They could lay out the weeks that it's going to be, right? They have enough information for that. There's a lot of events that probably do, but other events like the Reconciliation Walk, for instance, has changed. So I don't think changed in location. The preference may not be that we give a 5-year approval for that location. So maybe we just do it on a one-off, not on a one-off basis. We want to approve lots of events to make it easier for them, but maybe we do it as they come. And then if we give consideration during the CIP process to which of those CIP potential grants would be suitable for multi-year commitment of funding, that could streamline process for events as well. I'm going to go to Councillor Haggard, then Councillor Patola, then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to bring this point up on the next motion, but you talked about terms of reference in the community investment program. Do we have a terms of reference for the community investment program? Because I can't seem to find one. So I would like to ask staff to develop a terms of reference or a policy for the community investment program. Thank you.
If we don't, we should. Mike.
Through the chair, we do have a terms of reference. We had to dig back through agendas to find it. It is in need of a rewrite, but we can bring it to the committee of the whole when we talk about community investment this year. And we could advise on some changes that we would recommend.
Great, thank you.
Because I couldn't find it on the website anywhere.
Councillor Patola and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we have verged into the dark art of legislative drafting here by developing a list of specifics because of our intent to assist those specifics. And I don't think that is the job of City Council. That's not the job of any governing organization. The job of the governing organization is to make policy rules that apply equally and fairly to all groups. The the places where this motion and the next one could be improved is support. Support is not defined. Support could be that last year you gave me CIP funds, so this year you have to give me CIP funds. Or last year you closed the street, so this year you have to close the street. And if you don't, and you suggest because you're doing construction we have to reroute somehow, we're going to sue you for our losses because you have taken on an obligation to support us in the manner that you've supported us already. So there is some serious consideration needs to be made to what legal obligations we're creating for ourselves. Also, what legal obligations are we creating for future councils? If we're going to put this in for 5 years, we're significantly binding the hands of future councils as to what they do. We're only here for 2 more years, 4 in total. I would suggest that the problem is certainly solvable, and the intent of the solution that we have before us can certainly be adopted and promoted, but in a different functional way, which is the general policy of support for community events, and that the city will be committed to a certain level or standard of reasonableness, which could be further defined, to assist all groups that are putting on events that meet certain criteria. This rolls over into the next paragraph, which is certain criteria, in my opinion, would certainly not be undertaking commitments for for-profit groups. Because for-profit groups, irrespective of the potential for communal benefit of an event they put on, are doing it for a purpose, even if a tangential purpose, of promotion of the business. And they certainly already receive, by putting on the event, tax benefits because those events' costs are then deductible. So to provide a for-profit business with funding to put on an event, I think is outside of what we are allowed to do with tax dollars, because we would be benefiting a particular business as opposed to benefiting a not-for-profit community benefit. So I think that this definitely needs to be reworked. The intent is great because, yeah, it's troublesome for volunteer groups to plan ahead and not have some surety that their event can go ahead. We certainly should be providing that surety because we certainly should be recognizing the benefit that these groups provide to the community. But I think committing the city to 5 years of a general word of support and saying that we're going to give for-profit businesses 5 years of support, which could be financial, is going to get us into trouble. And the principles of drafting this policy, or if it becomes a bylaw or however it becomes, the principles of legislative drafting should be more strictly adhered to avoid those potential pitfalls. And in doing so, achieve the purpose of the motions that were brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I definitely think that as it's written right now, probably outside of the context of the original motion when it was made, I think it's far too general, just specifically because I didn't even know that it was intended to be for CIP, which I think is a bigger commitment. I think there's a way to fix it though, and I think the intent makes a lot of sense. I want to support the intent. So I'm going to go to Councillor Mealy and then come back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think that's the main thing is the intent is to actually streamline for not only the groups but staff as well. And if the list is only a couple of items, at least we're doing something. Meaning, you know, I think everybody in this community would support the Salmon Festival, where it's going to be for the next 5 years. That's an easy one. The Fall Fair Parade. And in saying that, I mean, if we had a water main break on 10th Avenue between Wallace and Maitland at the time of the Fall Fair Parade, don't want to speak on behalf of the Fall Fair, but I don't think they're going to sue us. We'll just work around it. That's what we do as Port Albernians. We'll just work around it. So I mean, even if the list is, like I said, and in talking about the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, it has changed where it starts and all that. So those are things that can be worked around. But definitely, like I said, the Salmon Fest, the Fall Fair Parade, the Toy Run, everything that happens in September in this community are things that have been happening for a long time and are very beneficial and from nonprofit as well. So. As I understand Councilor Patola, 100%, I still think there's some validity in this, even if the list is 3 or 4 items. At least it'll help those groups in town, and it'll help our staff streamline the process and make it easier for everybody involved.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said here, and I certainly think that we don't want to be like wholesaling offering 5-year approvals for whatever. The original motion that I made, going back a few weeks, how I saw that playing out in practice was that we were simply adding into our process that when groups came forward and applied, it would be standard practice for us to consider whether 5 years was appropriate in that case. I hadn't thought of this proposal of us submitting a list. I suppose that's maybe how you might begin things, but I also agree that maybe it's a little bit too general for us to work with it this time. But I just wanted to be clear that I didn't see this as sort of something that was to sidestep a process of council giving approval. It was rather that we already had the option of approving for 5 years, I'm sure, if we made, that motion as they came forward. It was just to make it a standard procedure that was a consideration for each group that came forward. And perhaps, as Councillor Mealy has pointed out, maybe the list we submit right now is just to make sure that, these 3 main events that happen in town, they're set for 5 years. And from now on, we'll go case by case basis, and some will be able to give approval, and others, as you've pointed out, vary year to year in a way that it wouldn't be appropriate to make that 5-year approval. As far as the CIP goes, I think that would also be the same, is that in most cases, we're probably not approving CIP long-term. However, in a case-by-case basis, we might say, yes, we will approve this for 5 years. And I'm assuming, obviously, and maybe there could be clarification after if I'm wrong, but that the term support is used because it's going to vary case by case, where we can say, yes, this is how we're supporting this particular event, and we're going to continue to do so for 5 years, rather than getting really specific about what that means, because it's going to mean something different in each individual case.
Absolutely, and I think that makes a lot of sense from my perspective. If the Salmon Fest uses city tents and they get approval for those through the CIP process, it makes no sense for them to have to apply every year for use of city tents. We should commit those city tents to them for that weekend for 5 years, every year. It's less work for them, it's less work for us. We know that volunteers are overwhelmed by some of our processes. There's no reason that we should have to give approval to that every year. The wording of the motion as it stands today, I don't like, but I think we could amend it to something that just says, that council enables staff to recommend approval for terms up to 5 years for city events. And then when they're coming forward to us, if it's applicable, if it's an event that makes sense, if it suits the needs of the group, and they're asking for a road closure, we give it to them for, that period, up to 5 years. If they're asking for, to use a specific location or a city facility, we give it to them for up to 5 years. And then separately in the community investment program, if it is a I would say, non-cash, if it's use of if it's an in-kind request, that we have the ability worked into the terms of reference, which would come through a separate motion from this. I think that we can leave the CIP pieces out of this because that should come through a terms of reference, not through this motion. But for in-kind events or in-kind requests, we would have the ability to approve those for multiple years. I think that's ultimately what we're trying to get to. We should reduce the level of work for volunteers and the level of work for staff where it can be. So I would just suggest that we amend this motion. We don't want to provide staff with a list. Why don't we just amend it to say, okay, go ahead, Councillor
Sorry,
Neely.
Madam Mayor, maybe I'll just rescind the motion at this time.
Absolutely. Does the seconder agree with that? Whoever seconded it? I think it was Councillor Dame. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. So motion is off the floor. I'm just going to move in line with the last one, that council directs staff to bring forward recommendations for approval up to 5 year for local event operational approvals where they deem it appropriate and where there is support from the event provider. Okay. And let's leave the CIP piece out of this. So this is just for operational requests, closures, et cetera. Is that simple enough and clear enough for everyone? Councillor Patola doesn't like it, but he doesn't have his hand up, so I'm not going to recognize him. Go ahead, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I don't like it because we just haven't had, these waters are muddy. And the only way to clarify waters are to slow down and let the sediment filter out so we have nice, clear water and we know where we're going. Throwing more dirt in the water doesn't help it become less muddy. So making motions off the top of our head, and this is not directed at anybody, just in general, it's probably not a good practice because we'll pick words that may have a dictionary meaning that may not be what we're using it for in the vernacular. So I would suggest that even that last motion be withdrawn and we work on this all together in a cohesive manner. Particularly because I'm still concerned about whatever words we choose, creating a precedent that binds the city to perform some sort of obligation. And even though you've taken CIP out of this, and I don't see our Director of Finance here anymore, but I would question whether or not we could commit CIP funds for 5 years. CIP funds are part of the budget. The budget is changed every year. What happens if we don't have CIP funds to commit, but we're under an obligation to an event to provide certain funds or services in kind that we simply don't have in the budget to provide? So I would suggest just retracting the last motion, have all of these matters revisited with the suggestions that Learned Council has made already to staff, and we'll see it again another day so that we can support these events going forward in a way that we're capable of supporting.
Thank you. I'm not going to do that, but appreciate the comments. A couple things I will just say. Firstly, council makes multi-year commitments to organizations, makes multi-year commitments that bind future councils all the time. That's just a regular part of council. Council is a continuous body. And my motion specifically does not give any approvals, but rather enables staff to bring back a recommendation for a 5-year approval that council would then, at the time, have the ability to approve or deny. Council could, not read the recommendation as stated. Council could opt to change it to a shorter term. It just really encourages staff to look for those opportunities. On the CIP, I think I will put forward another motion right after on CIP. But I think that the original intent of this is great. It makes a lot of sense. We do want to just reduce the, in a lot of cases, bureaucracy for people having to go through a process to apply for something every year. I remember a few years ago, the Grad Society, just as one example, forgot to apply for their road closure. they're often volunteers, especially in grad, they're often doing it for the first time. They don't know the processes. It just doesn't make sense to have to do that every year. I think there are some areas where it will make perfect sense to simplify, give a multi-year approval, and a lot where it won't. And in those cases, we don't. And we also aren't tied to, and staff doesn't have to recommend it. So I don't think we need to, like, I appreciate your points, but I don't think we need to overthink it too much. Let's just enable staff to bring back a recommendation for a 5-year approval where it's appropriate, and where it's not, we just keep doing what we're doing. Comments? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm okay with discussing this at a later date and having another, I'm good with nighttime meetings, so if we want to go to committee of the whole again until 10 o'clock, I'm totally fine with that. But I understand, again, going back to the intent and what we're trying to do here. And so if we're going to leave it up to staff to kind of put that together, I can understand it. I mean, like I said too, and they're all on page 21 of the October 21st Committee of the Whole meeting. So which is the link that's on our agenda. And the events that have been received funding in the 2024 CIP cycle. And CIP funds are built into the 5-year financial plan. So we can kind of say what's going to happen in a couple of years, and we can move that around. So I can kind of understand that. But again, Salmon Festival, Fall Fair, Parade, Toy Run, Grad Parade, and then there's a whole other list like Rotary Color Fest and stuff. So, but I mean, again, maybe it's a smaller list right now. And again, I would love to see those. You know, I'm going to go on the record and say it, like Salmon Fest, Fall Fair, Toy Run, Terry Fox Run, Grad Parade, Polar Bear Swim, stuff like that. They should all be in that list no matter what. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, again, this wouldn't be bringing a list. It would just be as they come forward, council or staff would recommend up to 5 years or not, based on if it's appropriate or not. Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. And before we get to the next one, I am going to move that council direct staff to prepare a report recommending potential changes to the Community Investment Program terms of reference, including exploring the potential for approval or for multi-year approvals.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. So no commitment, but rather information gathering. I don't have to say probably to a committee of the whole, but to a committee of the whole. Comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And the last motion we have here, Councillor Mealy, if you want to read that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Council for the City of Port Alberni receive the interim housing needs report in accordance with section 585.31 of the Local Government Act and ahead of the January 1st, 2025 deadline set by the BC Ministry of Housing. Sorry, I'll rescind that, Madam Mayor. So we're still dealing with the very last motion with the city involvement in local events?
That's right.
Okay.
So we could just refer report I just asked for.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, and I apologize because my understanding was that was to take place of that motion.
Well, we could skip it. This is just specifically, so the motion as it's written, I'll just read it out for everyone's awareness. It says that Council for the City of Port Alberni directs staff to include a provision in the Community Investment Program that for-profit or private organizations organizing local fundraising events where proceeds will provide community benefit will have the same access to a nonprofit same access as a nonprofit organization to the Community Investment Program. So this is not asking for a report or information, it's asking to make this change. I would say if council wants to explore this, I mean, this certainly could be passed as is, or we could just ask that that generally be included in the report. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just, yeah, in reading that, so I guess the one example would be the Polar Bear Swim, which is the event organizer is 93.3 The Peak, not a nonprofit organization, but the community still feels, or council still feels, that there's a benefit of having it in the community for the betterment of the community. So that's where where that motion is leading, so.
Is council okay if this just is included in review for options as a part of a report rather than voted on today for implementation? Okay. Wonderful. Then we'll move on to item number 4, and this is the recommendation from October 21st, 2024 Housing Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move that the Council for City of Port Alberni receive the interim housing needs report in accordance with Section 585.31 of the Local Government Act and ahead of the January 1st, 2025 deadline set by the BC Ministry of Housing.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Comments? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a very extensive, in-depth report, and Brian gave a very short summary at our last committee of the whole at the end of a 5-hour meeting. I was wondering if it would be possible, and I'm not saying now or, tomorrow or the next little while because we're beating the budget, but at some point, if we could have a committee of the whole meeting just dealing with this report, going through it so we can really understand, because we're going to have to do some really pre-planning for the next few years for housing and figure out what our priorities are and what we need in this community. So I would like to have a more time and to go over the report. If Brian is amenable to that and if council is amenable to that.
Yep. Any issue from council? Okay, seeing none. Then are we suggesting we don't adopt, or are you okay
I'm
with?
still willing to accept the report because we do have a deadline, but I think it's important that council really understands this report and what it means. There's a lot in that report.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So for everyone at home, it's on page 149 of the October 21st Committee of the Whole meeting. The entire report is there, and it's a little over 70 pages, so it's a lot to take in. So for anybody at home that wants to read it, it's on that agenda at page 149.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Seeing no other comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And did we want to take action on the second, or do we want to wait for that one? Councillor Haggard.
I think we could still go ahead and adopt the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead if you want to read it.
Okay. I move that council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to develop the 2042 official community plan in consideration of the interim housing needs report as required by section 473.12 of the Local Government Act.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And that obviously will continue to come back to council. Item number 5, we have UBCM Grant 2024 Asset Management Planning Program.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. This report presents an application for the UBCM 2024 Asset Management Planning Program, which offers funding to support ongoing improvements in local government asset management practices. The purpose of the application is to secure matching funds to enhance the city's asset management practices, specifically in integrating asset management with long-term financial planning. This project aligns with the city's asset management policy by ensuring that funds are committed to the proper management and maintenance of municipal infrastructure, aiming to meet service levels sustainably and responsibly. In particular, the proposed project supports several key principles of the Asset Management Policy Number 3000-1, including long-term sustainability, risk-based and customer service-focused approach, and systematic framework and knowledge sharing. Some of the key activities of the project include compiling existing data. This activity will consolidate existing data across departments, supporting the policy's emphasis on information sharing, ensuring that asset data is centralized and accessible. Activity 2 is defining risk and levels of service. And this step aligns with the policy's focus on balancing service expectations with risk management, allowing for the prioritization of assets based on both risk and service levels. Activity 3 of the project is a funding demand analysis. Using the compiled data, the project will analyze funding needs over the next 30 years, aligning with the asset management policy's commitment to whole life cost management and enabling the city to better understand its long-term asset replacement requirements. And finally, activity 4 will define the asset replacement funding targets. This final activity integrates risk and service level scenarios with funding needs to calculate annual funding targets, reflecting the policy's principles of balanced decision-making and proactive financial planning. This analysis will also highlight potential risks if funding gaps are not addressed, underscoring the long-term impacts of deferred investment. So in conclusion, this application to the UBCM 2024 Asset Management Planning Program directly supports the city's asset management policy, advancing sustainable, risk-based asset management practices that align with Council's long-term objectives and promote financial sustainability in alignment with the principles outlined in the policy. Applicants will be advised of the status of their application by the end of November. Madam Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Excellent report and information. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read the motions?
I'd love to. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that Council support the application to the UBCM 2024 Asset Management Planning Program to enhance the integration of asset management planning with long-term financial planning.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council amend City of Port Alberni 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 5097-2024 by allocating $15,000 towards the UBCM Asset Management Planning Program in 2024 from other common services to 11259.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Thanks for your work on this. Okay, and item number 6, we have another grant application for Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program.
Madam Mayor, the REDIP grant is, or sometimes called REDIP, is an opportunity for us to obtain up to $50,000 a year for 2 years running to build capacity in the Economic Development Department. We are proposing to match that funding from the contract services and marketing portions of the existing economic development allocation in the 5-year financial plan. We would retain some of the funding from that contract services and marketing funds to be able to do other things as well. The matching funds are not an essential requirement of the grant, but doing so would increase our chances of securing a third consecutive REDIP grant and enable us to hire or contract a full-time resource for the 2 years. The person would assist with grant writing, focus on other non-tax revenue sources of income for the city, and take on some of the economic development now, next, and later projects and other to-do items that are not getting done in a timely fashion. The individual will be coached and mentored by myself as necessary. The additional capacity would allow me to focus more on diversifying the economies into the sectors identified in Council's corporate strategic plan, create a specific economic development master plan to complement those master plans being done for the city's other departments, and accelerate our transition into the vibrant waterfront community that we are on track for becoming again.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Okay, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council approve the city as an applicant to the economic capacity stream of the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, REDIP.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council amend City of Port Alberni 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 5097-2024 by allocating $50,000 of economic development in 2025 and 2026 to be utilized as matching funds as a grant request of $100,000 from the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, REDIP.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. Seeing, question?
No,
Councillor
I
Mealy.
just want to clarify, this is just an allocation of the funds. It's not additional funds. We're just moving funds within your department, sir.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And I just think it's important to say that we've been very fortunate with this grant in the past. yeah, it's in the report, but $1 million for the SOMAS remediation and quite a bit of other funds into the community specifically from this as well. On to our last item, which is the BC Nonprofit Housing Association Conference. I think it's November 18th to 20th. And Councillor Patola, I think, just wanted to confirm if we have anyone attending and give approval.
Yes. An article about homelessness was circulated, and it caused me to think that it was time for this conference again, one I've attended for a number of years, and find it to be excellent, an excellent source of information about low-income housing, not-for-profit housing, and confronting the issues of homelessness in our communities. It's very educational. And I think that really it should be the type of experience that is made available to counselors every year. And some counselors should take advantage of it every year, because homelessness, unfortunately, is not an issue that will be going away soon. And we will continue dealing with it. The more information and knowledge we have on the area, the better. So last year I attended, as did Mary Claire. It was great. It was great. So I just want to recommend some other counselor go, and that we think about putting it on our date list for next year when it's going to come up again. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who's available to attend? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did look at the website, and the hotels that they had, they're already booked. And I think that's also at the same time as Grey Cup, so it may be difficult to get accommodations. And when you look at the sessions, a lot of the sessions are already fully subscribed. They're full as well. So if someone wants to go, I think this would be a great opportunity, but I think your options may be limited this year. But we certainly need to keep it on our radar, as Councillor Patola suggested, and make sure that we send a councillor every year and do it at the beginning when it first gets open.
Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would appreciate the opportunity to attend this conference, taking Councillor Haggard's remarks into consideration. If this year isn't going to be, viable, if it's not going to be, it's going to be too much of a pain to try to figure out accommodations, and there aren't sessions to make it worthwhile to make the trip, then I understand that. But if it looks like it might be, a good opportunity, then I'm happy to go.
Thank you. I've been to this conference in the past before, and I think it's highly valuable to our community. Why don't I'll personally just make a motion that we approve Councillor Dame attending the conference.
I'll second that.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Haggard, and we'll just say that the staff can just check first to make sure, obviously, that that he is able to register for all the sessions still and make it worthwhile. And if not, we'll skip it for this year and attend next year. But I do think these conferences are really important, not only for us to learn and bring back information, but we often make good connections there in terms of like housing providers and other types of things. I personally learned of like a specific fund that we weren't aware of a few years ago when I attended. And I think we've gotten a lot of good value out of these types of conferences in the past. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We will move on to question period. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting. Up to three questions will be permitted per speaker. And for anyone participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature, and I will call on you in the order in which your hand appears. When you come to the microphone, if you don't mind just introducing yourself, and just our kind of general rule now is let us know whether you live in the city or not. We used to say address, so we don't need your address. Just let us know if you're a city resident. You can come forward first.
Thank you very much. I wasn't planning on saying anything but three questions, at least many questions, but I have three. When you spoke about wanting the addresses of our members because you wanted to know who lived in town, who didn't live in town, and that's for the purpose of, from what I can understand, listening to all the comments at the last meeting and this meeting, it's more so whether or not you're interested in some kind of 4-year payback scale rather than the request to have a rate of our own. That's pretty clear, I believe, in my opinion. So am I correct in saying that you want those to see if 100% of our members live in town? Well, then we should grant them something. If only 20 do, then they don't. And that's just, I'm going to get asked that question by my members.
For sure.
And I'd like an answer.
Yeah,
I'd like to give them an answer. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
absolutely.
word it that way.
Sure. So firstly, we don't want their addresses specifically. We don't want anything that, crosses potential just privacy issues. I think what we've asked our staff to come back with is to ask you to look through your membership and let us know roughly what percentage are city residents versus not city residents. I can't say specifically what council is going to consider with that or not. What I will say from my perspective is not that it's, are we going to give you the deal we already had previously suggested, which was still increasing the rates all the way, but scaling it over 4 years? Or are we going to not give you that, but rather, are these rates even the right direction or not? I think it's circling back to that conversation as a whole. I would say that the question is still completely open on whether this is the right direction or if we should be focusing on the regional district as the area that we want to look for balancing some of these costs rather than our facility users.
Okay, thank you. Now you're taking this back and discussing it again, and as was said by a couple of your members, you have debated this round and round. And I appreciate that. I'm not making that a comment that you shouldn't. Do you have any idea now how long you're going to have this and which meeting it will come back? And that leads to my third question.
It definitely won't be in the next, like we have, I think our meetings are we only have one committee of the whole left this year. So at the earliest, it would be at our January committee of the whole, because I think our November one is kind of fully scheduled already. What I will say is whatever determination we ultimately come to, we'll have a notice period. So like, I think I can commit that for myself, and I don't see any kind of dissenting views on council on this. If we take another 4 months to, hash this out before we come to what we think is the right decision, because these are big issues and we don't want to rush them. We do want to make sure that what we come up with works long term. Then we're not going to say, well, it's supposed to be implemented 6 months from now, so now you have only 4 weeks notice or, whatever it is. Whatever we come to, we will ensure that there is a notice period that makes sense. And we're not going to spring this on anyone. If we do just continue going on and on in conversation, then we have the ability to push the dates out. And I would personally be committed to that. We recognize that our decisions have financial impacts to organizations.
All right, you've answered my third question. Thank you for your time.
Easy, thank you. Are there other questions? Come on forward.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak. I'm Louise Johnson. I'm not in the habit of talking, so it's be patient. I regularly go to the pool, and this stuff has come up about the increase in costs and what's going on. So I'm here today to kind of voice my thoughts on what's been happening and what council is going to do about it. So basically, I was working, so the pool hours have been cut and cut and cut. Water aerobics is no longer in the evenings. So basically, I retired. I started water aerobics, it's cut back again. So I'm looking at it, and I understand the pool rates. I've been using the pool for years. I've been using it for 20 years, and I understand rates have to go up. Everybody gets that. What I want from council is there going to be, with the increase in cost, are they going to put back the services that we had before, like swim lessons, water aerobics? I went this morning to water aerobics. There's 50 people there. Most people now are not using the pool. They're going to Nanaimo, they're going to Courtenay, and they're going to Qualicum. And that makes me sad. We need the pool for our kids. We need to teach them how to swim. We need to move forward on this. So that's one thing. So it's about the fees. And the other thing was, I think I have it here. Oh, yes, I have heard that there's problems with staffing. So they said that staffing seems to be a problem. That's why the pool hours have been cut so drastically. Lately, I've noticed that there is a whole big bunch of new staff coming on, and I thank God that they are. It's like, it's nice. But now that they're on, I would expect that there should have been a change in the hours of the pool, and there has not been. There's no discussion on that, and I'm just wondering if council is aware of all of this stuff and what we're doing moving forward.
Thank you for your questions, Louise, and for coming and for speaking. So the first thing that we'll answer these as best we can. I'm going to go to our CAO for the second one. So the first thing is on, like, will the increased fees lead to more services? What I will say is that the reduction in hours and services is not as a result of cut in budget. It is simply as a result of staffing. So while I wish we could say we're going to increase the fees and you're going to get more hours, you will get more hours as soon as we can staff them, but we are absolutely not cutting services at the pool for budget purposes, ever. We are trying very much to get the pool
Okay, because they
back.
have been cut for a substantial amount of time.
And it is due to staffing, and it is not due to budgetary reasons. So so appreciate that. We have been able to hire, council's been made aware of a good cohort of new staff at the pool, which we're really excited about. And that was, I think, I have to say, like, through the efforts of staff to really innovatively find ways to train more people, which does take time. You know, we've been in this position for a long time, what feels like forever. And you can't just train qualified lifeguards overnight. So it has taken time, and staff has made a concerted effort to get there. But we do know that the hours have not resumed, and we are still canceling programs. So Mike, if you're able to speak to what you can on that.
Sure, thank you for the question. I can speak to a little bit of it. Yeah, through the chair, it is a continuous issue with staffing. A lot of the staff that we have recently hired are involved in school activities in school. So doesn't always service the daytime hours of the pool. And some of the staffing is new in being lifeguards. So we do have to continue to train them so they're comfortable in providing certain activities. So that will be an ongoing priority of our more senior staff, is to get everybody comfortable in the different tasks. We do still have a shortage on the Monday to Friday area to provide more staffing. So if we are continuing to put a plea out there for anybody that is not in school and has their lifeguarding certificates to please apply, so we can do some much needed programming. As we continue to staff up, we will be revisiting the hours and programs being offered, but we do have to do it in a meaningful way. Where we this summer we had planned on being fully staffed to offer fall swim lessons, and what we realized is we staffed up, but the hours in which some of our lifeguards can work didn't match up with the planned swimming lessons. So it turned out that we ended up having to forego some of those swimming lessons. We are trying to reschedule some of them in different time slots that then end up bumping other types of programming. But again, it's a little more complex than just hiring anyone and getting the pool open. I know that it is facing aquatic centers across the island and in BC, but staff is doing everything we can to try and get the pool back open.
And I will just say that as we do get the staff, there is a commitment to replace the hours and the program. So we hear you on this, and I know how frustrating it is. I mean, I heard from so many people when those most recent swim lessons were canceled, especially when that's the challenge, right? We want to get as soon as we can back to being able to offer the services and hours, but then when we have to cancel, it just loses that confidence again. So I think, unfortunately, with lifeguards, it is a longer cycle of hiring, training, and getting people to the level that we need them in order to be able to operate the pool than with, obviously, some other professions. So it's been a challenge, but it's certainly a priority.
I look forward to the extended hours.
Yeah. Thank you, Louise. Come on forward.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and especially the beginning of the meeting when you all provided the information as far as the discrepancies in city dwellers and stuff, because like a lot of people these days, I get my information off of Facebook. Yeah, unfortunately, and I contribute to it as well. So when you were talking about the extended hours, like Louise was saying, I understand there's a lot of new lifeguards being trained, and that's great. So some of the programs may come back. I posted something the other day regarding the closures of the pool on the weekends. I think from about 3 in the afternoon till Saturdays till Monday, there is nothing. And I know a lot of people are going out of town, and I know we always talk about shop in Port Alberni, stay in Port Alberni. Well, I've also gone out of town on a Sunday. And we come back with a carload of Costco, go to the mall. And I'm just hoping that with the new lifeguards being trained, is there any chance that we're going to be open on weekends again? Because every other pool that I've looked into that's within driving distance is open on Sundays. So that's my question.
Absolutely, thank you. So I think same answer as before. However, do we have any additional information on the Sunday service specifically? Because that one, you would think should be more achievable when we're dealing with students.
Through the chair, I would have to bring back information. I don't have that at the top of my head.
Thank you. So I think we'll ask our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Heritage to bring additional information to the next council meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions?
Hello, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and councils. My name is Mike Shelton. I've been a resident of Port Alberni for just about 11 years. I moved here. I love this little town. But there's some changes I've seen in the last 11 years that, I'm starting to think about these things. There's a lot of things that we can't control, but there's some things that we can. The reason I'm here today is I heard a rumor today. I heard a rumor, and I'm here to see if there's anything true to that rumor. And that rumor was that they were going to put up our fees at the pool by 100%. That's double, okay? 100% is double what we're paying, okay? Times are tough. And I know there's some people there that built this town that won't be able to afford that increase. Some people, 80, well, they get a free one, but some people in their 70s, they're paying, $150 extra is a lot for 1/3 less of the time that pool's open. I had this question before, and I've talked to lifeguards, that if some of these people, not the students because they're going to school, but there's people will come here and work full-time as a lifeguard. We have, I think, 2 full-time lifeguards, and they're getting 37 hours. They're not getting benefits. They need something to attract them here more than just 20 hours or 25 hours a week. We are paying their wages. We need that service. I got a schedule here. I'm totally not expecting this. This just happened to me today that I decided I wanted to come and try to get involved in this stuff with this town, this city, right? And I should have been involved when they were talking about the new pool, because that's a whole different thing. I mean, it's not right for me to talk about that now. I hope there's another time when I can talk about that new pool. You were talking about the outlying country, right? Well, we can't get them on board to build a $100 million pool, which might take 5 years, Where's everything else going to be? We need to spend our money now, what we need now, what we really need it. $100 million, they say it could be that much by then when we build. And we spent a lot of money on quotes and stuff already, right? It's like, I love to have a new pool. I go consistently for 11 years. But is it in, So anyway, I have a concern about the pool going up. It's not a lot of money, but it's an increase for less, it's paying more for less, You're getting a half a dozen eggs instead of 12 dozen for twice the price. It doesn't make sense to me, But anyway, I'd like to thank for the offer to at least see something. I think I'll be around here a little more. I'd like to get involved. Everybody's got ideas. I can't go by all the hearsay, you know? I got to know the facts, right? So,
Appreciate that.
I mean, I know the pool, I mean, yeah. And you were saying also, Qualicum Beach, Parksville, Deep Bay, they're all paying for that pool. We got Port Alberni, and we can't get the district to hop board. Like, where are we going? Be real. Be real. you know?
Absolutely.
Like,
Thank
be
you.
different.
Councillor Mealy
Anyways.
first. No, absolutely. Thank you, Mike, for speaking in. We'll answer what we can. Councillor Mealy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate you, Mr. Shelton, for thinking the way we do, definitely. So just the question was out there on the admission. So if you were to go into the pool today as a youth, it's $3. What is being proposed is $3.33. If you were to go in there as an adult, it's $5. What is being proposed on the agenda is $6.19. If you're a senior, it's $3, being proposed to be $5.24. So there's the admission rate, and this is just the admission rates that is on right now and what's in the agenda for today. So there's, hopefully that answers your question at least.
Yeah, and I don't think that that's correct. Mike, are you able to confirm?
It was up for proposal.
Yeah, and for sure.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, maybe, and it's just because I can't repeat everything on this. So before we go in camera, if you have a second after the meeting, sir, I'll show you what the admission rates are today, and I can show you what it's proposed to be. So we'll sit together.
Something double for less service, it didn't go over good, right? So, yep.
Absolutely. And I don't believe the doubling is anywhere near correct, but we will get that confirmation as well, and we'll provide it in our next council meeting also so that members of the public can hear it additional to yourself. I just wanted to say as well on the new pool, I think it's really important that people realize that the city is not leading the process on the new pool. So we own and operate the current pool. We have said that we cannot own and operate on our own as we do this pool, the next pool. So the regional district is leading the process on design, on engagement, on potential referendum, on what it's going to be. And we are supporting in that process. We are not leading it. So there's a lot of frustration at the city for proposing a $100 million pool. That is not us. The regional district, based on the information from the committee that took public engagement into consideration, the regional district is proposing what that facility would look like. Most recently at our last regional district meeting, there was a request from one of the directors to look at the existing Echo pool, to circle back to that as an option and see if we can just do a renovation. A number was referenced, I think, of $18 million that Echo pool could be renovated for. I think it's important for people to know that number was a rough estimate that was actually costed in 2011. So it's not a today number. But that said, our board on the regional district, of which myself and Councillor Haggard sit on representing the city, did support that recommendation to look at a renovation to Echo Pool, additional to the potential new pool. So there will be further work done on that. From my perspective, I think when we're looking at a $100 million facility, we need to explore all options. I don't think that's a number our community can afford in any sense. It's a very high amount, and I think it needs to be sent back to look at options. I would love a new pool. I am a frequent visitor of the Nanaimo pool with my kids, and every time I go to that pool, I think, like, I wish we had something here. Comox has a fantastic pool. Council just received a newspaper article about a potential renovation of the Qualicum pool for $30 million. Like, there are other options. I want a brand new amazing pool facility in our community, but we can't afford $100 million. So anyways, we are continuing that conversation with the regional district, but if you want to engage on that, the best place is the regional district, because otherwise, you're not included in that input that they're receiving, and they're the decision makers.
I love a new pool, okay? But we can't compare Port Alberni to Nanaimo, Comox. I mean, our population, we don't have the base here for the taxes for it. Hey, you know, we couldn't afford the interest on that loan, right? We couldn't, right?
Thank you. Other comment? Oh, come on forward. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go to Councillor Dame just for one comment, and then I'll call on you.
Thanks. Just real quick, in response to part of that question, I also wanted to mention, just given the opportunity and we're on the topic, that As far as full-time hours being offered at the pool, I think it's important for the public to hear that the reason for that is that the casual position allows greater flexibility to students and people who want to try to work lifeguarding in as, say, a second job or in addition to education, and that there is actually almost full-time hours available to those people if they request it. Because they can, now staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've been told. And so even though it's not listed as full-time hours, it is actually, the opportunity is fully there to be nearly full-time for anyone who wants it at this point. And so I just think that there's a misconception out there that only these minimal hours are being offered to people who want these positions. So I don't know if maybe the CAO wants to clarify if those comments are correct or not, but thank you.
Through the chair, I don't have the exact numbers on the top of my head. I know we did a frequently asked question on this, and I believe it's on the website still that answers those questions. And again, I wish I had to correct or verify what you're saying. I just don't. It hasn't been a topic that I've been updating myself on recently.
Yeah, I do know that we have been posting for full-time lifeguards multiple times, and that we have confirmed that full-time hours are being made available to our casual lifeguard staff. That was, we had a meeting where the recreation manager came and spoke along with the director of Parks, Recreation, Heritage.
But the majority, they are like I think one person told me there's one person there 37 and a half hours, okay? But the people that you do have there are students in that, so they can't really, okay. But if there was a couple full-time jobs offered to a Monday, Friday, that lets people go and fill the other area so we can fill the pool with people so we can go there, right? You know, there's
For sure.
option.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. And I just want to say I did look up the 1 month pass for the admissions, and this is for all of our recreation services. But so just to give everyone context, a 1 month pass for admissions to the pool and everything else currently is $28.80 and is being proposed to go to $35 for a child. Adult is $56 and it's being proposed to go to $66. A family is $120, being proposed to go to $154. However, a senior is $28.80, being proposed to go to $50. So I think that's the big increase that, thank you for noting that for us, because that's the big increase that is being talked about here. And I think that is out of line with the other increases. I'm sure there's a rationale for it. Probably senior is quite a bit lower than everyone else right now in terms of what's common, but appreciate you bringing that to us. This is not, this is being sent back for further discussion, and so we will note that at the next meeting and have discussion about it. So yeah, really appreciate, have to actually go to like our website, and we don't have a side-by-side comparison here, so we have to go to our website and then to our agenda and compare the different classes. So I think that possibly was just lost in some of this discussion, as it is a large bylaw with a lot of details. So yeah, thanks for bringing it to us, and we will make sure we have discussion about that and review if it's appropriate or not. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and again, we'll discuss this at Committee of the Whole. So, but again, it does get progressively worse. I understand that the fees that were brought to us was staff looked at the median across the way. The other part of this that I'd like to say, well, so the yearly pass for a senior now is $172, and it's proposed to be $409. So that's out. And not only that, I'd also like to say, and it was something I thought of now, but again, we're going to bring it up at Committee of the Whole, was that youth and senior fees are usually tied together, the same thing. As you can see, it's $172.80 right now for a child or a teen. It's $172.80 for a senior. They're exactly the same. So it was something I was going to mention at Committee of the Whole anyways, but I look forward to having that discussion.
So this is why we just keep sending them back, and we got to keep, and I will just say that this is, when we used to make these decisions prior to our Committee of the Whole structure, we used to bring a report like this to a council meeting, give it the first, few readings, bring it back once more and pass it. Now we discuss at committee of the whole, it gets community attention, we're able to hear input, it comes to a council meeting, we're able to hear input, we send it back sometimes, we hear more input, we bring it back. I think will actually be the third time this has been to a committee of the whole. So it's, maybe not a perfect process. It does take longer sometimes. However, we do get the opportunity now with the system that we have to hear from the public and ensure that the decisions we're making work. So anyways, thanks for coming forward. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question today? On forward.
My name is Bill Randalls, city resident, longtime city resident. I first came here, I think, in 1965. I've used their pool aquatic centers right from when it started, so 50-some years. And people have talked about rate changes. Yeah, that's an issue. That's been covered pretty good. New pool, it's a non-starter as far as I'm concerned, just because of the cost. I'd like to talk about the pool hours. We've got a pool. If it needs some work, spend some money, do whatever we have to do. But I have seen the pool hours just deteriorate to next to nothing over the last couple of years. That pool for a good 45, 50 years was 7 days a week. I think it was 6:30 in the morning until 10 or 10:30 at night, 7 days a week. And now it's open half a day, 5 days a week, half a day on Saturdays, closed on Sundays. I've also gone to a lot of pools and checked them out over the last year. Courtney, Raven Song, I've used that quite a bit, Nanaimo, Oak Bay and Victoria. And I've talked to a lot of the lifeguards there, and they say, yeah, they've got manning issues, but they still are open 7 days a week, all day long. Somehow they're managed into it, and we're not. So that's kind of my issue, and I would hope council would maybe look into that.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And again, I do think it's important to note, because we have gotten this a little bit, this reduction in hours is not as a result of reduction in budget. We have not cut budget to lead to any of these things. It is a challenge that came following COVID, and you'll know that many businesses are facing reduced hours as a result of staffing shortages as well. But we do recognize, like I said, I visit other pools as well with my kids, and they're open. So, we know that everyone is experiencing these issues, but they're not necessarily having the same effect that they are here. So appreciate that note. And I think just maybe based on the questions today, we'll ask, rather than just asking for a comment at our next meeting, we could have an update from the Director of Parks, Recreation and Heritage on just the status of these issues, because I know that we were making progress on them with the new hires, and a community update I think would be helpful. Mike?
I did find on Play MPA under, sorry, I'm just going to go to it today so I don't send people the wrong way. Under About, there's FAQs, and then under there is pool operations. And I'll just make sure that that is updated for all the questions. A lot of the questions that were asked tonight are on there, and they're supposed to be updated. So I'll make sure they get updated again to answer some of the questions that were answered tonight. And then I'll get our director here at the next meeting.
Thank you. That's great. Additional questions? Joseph?
Mayor and council and staff, my name is Joseph Laskosic, and I live here in Port Alberni. I have a comment and then 3 little questions, I hope. First thing is on the, it's kind of a question, but it only came up because I'm reading question period, and it says it's an opportunity for the public to ask questions of council on decisions and recommendations made during the course of the meeting. Okay, that so far isn't, and it's quite often it happens there are things outside of recommendations, decisions made during council. That seems to be a norm on council meetings, that questions can be asked outside of the meeting. That's sort of what it states they have to relate to. So if that's the case, and it seems to be ongoing, I'd like to see that removed from there so that when people do come to council meeting, they feel free to ask questions maybe outside the realm of the council meeting. It seems something that's happening regular, so if
If
you
that's a
wouldn't mind.
question, I'll be happy to answer it.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Most of these questions today have been regarding the pool, which is a topic of today's meeting as a result of the fees and charges bylaw that was discussed. But as you know, when people do come who are not frequenters of our council meetings, I do try to stray a little bit from the firm rules to make sure that people are comfortable asking questions, giving opinions. We do have a higher expectation of rule following from you frequenters who know the rules, not because we want to take away your ability to speak, but rather because we do have to ensure, order and structure in a council meeting. And the people who do come regularly do know how to ask questions, when, et cetera. And somebody who is coming for the first time, I think we want to encourage them to come back. Often we have conversations after council meetings with people about structure and how to ask questions and when, et cetera. But I think, as you know, our goal is to try to make people feel comfortable engaging in council.
Thank you. So I have 3 questions, and they may not relate directly. So the first one is a question regarding the pathway maintenance. It's probably been, I know when it was first discussed, there was funding applied for grants. And I think part of the term was the city is obligated to maintain for so long. There was something, I think, related to that. And if so, the grant was then available. But that was part of the stipulation from what I remember of it. I may be wrong. So what I'd like to know is what are the associated costs with maintaining our new pathway that are, that are kind of, because there's going to be maintenance of all kinds. There's going to be, I don't know if we don't have great snow removal on our current public sidewalks that are city-owned. That's not looked after terribly well. So snow removal on the pathway. There's costs involved there. There's vandalism happened day one when things opened up. Electrical wires were vandalized and poles were vandalized. So there was costs. And I know it, from what I understand, until the contractor is finished with it, they were looking after the costs associated with some of the vandalism. That's going to be a cost that's going to go to the city. So I'm curious, beautiful path. I've walked the entire thing in its entire length, sometimes confusing because it ends like on 3rd Avenue when you get down to Redford. Where does that trail go? Oh, there it is over there in amongst the commercial stuff. A little bit awkward, but anyhow. So that's a little bit funny, but my thing is what will be the costs associated with that? Because it is part of, again, Parks and Recs, I believe, is part of that. I think the pathway that falls under that jurisdiction, I think. So that's
Thank
one
you.
question.
I'll just say, so first of all, regarding your comment about signage or about, where does it go? We do have signage still to install. We wanted to open the path up to the public to enjoy as soon as possible, but we did say it wasn't 100% complete. I'll say on your question generally, had this been on the agenda today, Joseph, we would probably be able to answer it because we would have information in front of us, which is really the intent of the only ask questions regarding the agenda, because then we are better prepared to get you information. That said, I think your questions here are largely budget, and because we have formally started our budget Q&A process, I can't answer your questions today, obviously, but we can add them to our budget Q&A document, so staff will note those, we'll include them so that the answers do come on the record. And lastly, I will just say that before council started planning the path, and I mean last council, we recognized that parks maintenance, if we were going to enhance our parks and recreation and specifically outdoor recreation assets, we needed to make sure we were able to maintain the ones that we have and our new assets that we were adding. So we did add parks and recreation labor maintenance over the planning years, and we did some investment in, like the Kitsaxis Dyke pathway and improving some of those assets. But labor specifically, we did invest in adding positions there to be able to maintain, because we don't believe in adding new assets that are just going to fall apart.
Perfect, thank you.
So any further questions that you asked that are not on the agenda today, but are budget related, we will note to add to the Q&A.
Okay, so this one's not budget related, but it's, and last time I spoke was at the Committee of the Whole, and I mentioned something that happened during the Fall Fair one day prior to its opening, that something occurred that could have disrupted something that's been ongoing for years. I didn't bring very good details to that, so I'm wondering if council and mayor would like to hear, and I will talk to the people directly involved rather than through my spouse who was volunteering there, directly and talk to the people that are engaged to bring clarification to exactly what happened. If you're interested, would you like me to do that?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, we do have a bit more information on it, on what happened now, but if you'd like to connect people directly involved with our CAO, then I think we can get both sides of what happened and ensure that, that if there was an issue, that it can be not a repeating one.
Sounds good. Thank you. So the first question was just throwing because so the last one is a comment and a question. I mentioned, I think well over a year ago, the crosswalk at Tebow and Johnson, and its timing was a little short. And if you're slightly disabled, a little slow in walking, you're not making it across. Nothing's changed yet. And I'm just curious how long that takes. There was a daycare that was taking some kids across to go to, of course, McDonald's, right? And there was five for sure, there might have been 6 little ones, all 4 or 5 years old, walking with one adult across there. And all it takes is one child to step out of line to take too long to get across there. And I'm not sure why it takes so long. I know it's not a city thing, it is highways, but I'm just curious why that's to me is still a very unsafe crosswalk. So I'm just curious any progress on that.
Mike, are you able to update on that?
Yeah, through the chair, we have been working with the ministry on several issues on Johnson. That issue in particular is supposed to be being changed. I haven't gotten an exact timeline, but I was updated that it is in the queue to be changed and lengthened in time. We can't control when they do it, but we have had assurance that it will be increased.
It seems like it should be very simple, so we'll follow up.
It does, yeah, exactly.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you, and I'll try and keep my questions more specific next time.
Thank you. We'll give you a pass today, Joseph. Anyone else who would like to ask a question? Mr. Anderson.
It's not a question if you just give me time. I just want to mention that this has just been great to see these number of people coming out and asking questions, and I give a kudos to them all. I just hope it encourages more people to come out and actually participate at the meetings, and I hope they come back. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any other speakers. Would somebody like to move? Oh, Councillor Mealy.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, move to adjourn the meeting, regular council meeting, and reconvene in camera.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn regular and reconvene in camera. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Haggard. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And just for the information of the public, typically we just adjourn, but today we had an in-camera meeting prior that we did not complete, so we've recessed that one. So just a process thing.